Good afternoon and welcome to Lunchtime Stories, hashtag Candid Conversations with my cousin all the way from Fort Lauderdale, Florida in the US. Lauren Britz, how are you doing today?
Good, Kevin. I'm doing really, really well. I'm having a fantastic week here. And life and business is good around here in Florida at the moment.
I know that you were taking some time off. You were having a me moment last week. Are you feeling better? I mean, that's a good moment to have, right?
You know, sometimes when you don't stop yourself, the universe will stop you. So I actually did get a little bit sick. I haven't been sick in many, many years. There was no corona. It was just a little cold, which is interesting because now when you get sick, you get super worried about what's wrong with you.
Everything's like, oh man, it must be corona. Like, I'm sure it's corona. Yeah.
It's the first place your mind goes. But I will say that I had a cold. I had a nasal infection and I had to just sleep it off. And I did that and it was really amazing. So I'm very refreshed. Got out of the gym this morning and I'm ready to roll.
Fantastic. Glad to hear it. So, Lars, in terms of conversations, candid conversations at least, in the last week, we've had some interesting online conversations around the royals.
Yes, the royal family, darling.
Not to sound like a stuck record, but I watched some of the interview. I saw snippets of it, so I haven't seen the whole thing yet.
The Oprah interview?
Yeah, the Oprah interview, and I was like, I was so irritated by
I can tell.
I was so irritated by this whole conversation, right? So, like, for those who haven't seen it yet, guys, Oprah does an interview with Meghan Markle and Prince Harry, and they openly talk about some of their experiences and how she's left why they've moved and all the stories that go with it. But one of the things that really, really stood out for me is the racism conversation. I don't know, maybe I'm just growing up or maybe I'm just boring. But I'm like, we're in 2021, right? Like we're at this point of our lives on the planet. We've just almost dealing with COVID in a way that's like affected the entire planet.
Mm-hmm.
And here we are still talking about the color of a baby's skin.
You know,
am I hearing this correctly? Like, I thought, when you saw Meghan Markle, when they're having this wedding, it's like she's from a mixed race family and blah blah blah. And you're like, that's a really big step for the royals.
It's a great step. It's a really good step.
You've seen the whole interview. How does it sit for you? Because I'm a little bit peed off, and I'm kind of going, honestly, guys, like if we're actually still talking about the color of someone's skin, and that being a baby, like what the hell is wrong with the planet? Like, where are we right now?
It was actually kind of weird. So yesterday I did sit down and I watched the Oprah interview with Meghan and Harry. And, you know, I live in America in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and I've lived here for 15 years. It's going on 16. And one of the reasons I bring that up is because I think for South Africans, it's very different, race issues in our minds. And It's very hard for us to get out of that perspective because it's the only real perspective we have if you're still living in in South Africa. And it's not a bad perspective. It's just a perspective that we've gone through apartheid. So we're like over it. Like we're over the conversation. Like, okay, already. Like, all right, already. But what we forget is the rest of the world is still trying to catch up. And I giggle, not because it's a funny topic, but because it is quite mind-blowing. You sit there and you go, have we even moved an inch? Have we actually grown at all? And then I sit and I think, well, hold on. The rest of the world hasn't grown the way we have. They have not gone through the things that we have gone through. I'm not saying they haven't gone through crazy things themselves, but they have not gone through the racial binding and the agony and the crazy, intense situation that we've been through. Of course, now America's kind of, I don't want to say catching up in a way, but they're experiencing their own racial divides. And I think that it pisses you off, Kev, because we're over it. I think South Africans are mostly over this conversation. You know, we have ties back to England, apartheid ties, I might add. And I also just want to say, you know, that I think during apartheid, it was really the Iron Fist lady, what was her name, Margaret Thatcher. She was, you know, she was very integral in implementing apartheid. But the queen herself wasn't. As far as I know, and the research I've done, and I mean, we're living in a time back then of racism just being a thing, normal. But I know that the queen has always kind of stepped back and been sort of anti-racist, even though she hasn't spoken out about it. She's never actually been openly racist. So I've always known her to be very, well, like I know her, but you know, hey queen, what's up? But you know, it's
impression. We have that impression that she's kind of, you know,
she's put that out there, you know. But I will say that there's a couple of things here that I think matter. The fact that Meghan Markle is American matters. The fact that those two cultures are so vastly different. And I've lived in England, I've lived in South Africa, which is one of the places, by the way, they looked at moving to because it's a Commonwealth country. And now I live in America. And I live in a state that's, I wouldn't say the same as California or LA, but definitely, you know, we live on the edges of America, so we're very busy states. But these two cultures are very different, and they are very difficult to put into perspective. And I think that conversation that was had, I'm going to, they don't actually tell you, like Harry comes out and he says, yes, this conversation was had. He refuses blatantly. He will never say who that conversation was with. But I kind of assume it's not the Queen. I kind of want to go back to maybe Prince Charles or something like that. But also, and I think she would have stayed away from his brother because of other reasons, you know, Jeffrey Epstein and all that stuff. But I think that maybe, and the conversation was had directly with Harry, that was told to Meghan. And it's a very interesting interview. I mean, Oprah's face is priceless. When Meghan drops that little bomb on her, she's like, what? What are you talking about? Because this interview wasn't prepared, wasn't pre-planned, and the questions were open. They were only going to be asked over there. Of course, it was probably produced later on, but Oprah's facial expression was real. Like you could tell she was floored that people are still talking about the baby's skin. And, you know, I don't know why, but I kind of wish that it came out fully black baby, because then maybe people would have just not been a freaking problem anymore, you know?
Yeah, but
because you know she's pregnant with her second baby. I didn't know that actually.
And so the thing is, when you listen to this and you kind of go, okay, cool. So we are in 2021. Elon Musk is going to Mars. Like, do you know? Like there are.
And we're talking about baby color skin.
Yeah, we have an entire pandemic that's affected the entire planet to the point that the entire planet has shifted its carbon footprint to a degree, ever so slightly. And yet, we are still talking about the color of a child's skin. And I'm going, I don't know. I just have I have such a negative response to this. And I think what I'm noticing about me even having that kind of the response to it is I still think that we it seems this way that we still haven't had enough conversations about it. I listened to some of the interviews that the British press were having with that other oak. I don't even know his name. He's such a chop.
There were so many South Africanisms in what you just said.
Yes.
I might have to translate that for people. Like an oak is a man or a human. Generally a man, and a chop is somebody who's a bit silly.
But that English morning presenter, where he was so upset and he eventually left the show, and you're kind of going,
you talk about Piers Morgan. He's also got a big music on it.
What the hell is going on here, dude? Like, why are you? And then apparently there's a backstory, but you know, you kind of go, is it just a case of going, let's create enough hype and publicity around, and possibly that's the case, right? Possibly, you know, you come from a journalism background. Is it a case of just kind of digging in someone's wound, or a public wound, or really trying to get the story out of it, just to fuel fire? And I think, you know, we're at the point in the world where you're kind of going, are we not paying attention to it enough to kind of go, actually, there's a problem here. We should be having better conversations already.
Yeah, you know, I think that it's, even though this is a very bizarre conversation to have, and we don't really know how that conversation went down, you know, and I guess it doesn't really matter how it went down. You know, the topic is what it is. But I think that, you know, journalism has changed over the years, and different journalists in different countries. And I only worked as a journalist in South Africa and in Africa, but there the journalists really, because of apartheid, there was a lot of respect for journalism, and there was a lot of responsibility on the part of a journalist. Because our media was owned by the government and controlled by the government, we have that respect and we hold it sacred, because we never want that to happen again. These first world countries such as America and England, the UK, the journalists are brutal. And Megan said it in the interview, and I'm really grateful she said it. She said, they create the news. And I've been saying this forever, and people just look at me like I'm crazy, but they're like a zombie looking at me. I'm like, journalism in America, journalism in England, they create stories because there aren't enough other stories to talk about every day. So they create it. I mean, they literally make it a story when it really was nothing. It's kind of like making a mountain out of a molehill, you know? And it's what they do. It's very brutal. There's no more fact checking. There's no more, it's just bias. You know, there's a lot of bias. It's very, very seldom you're going to find any news article that is unbiased. And when in the interview, and I mean, the British tabloids were brutal with her. Yeah. I've never been a massive Meghan Markle fan, you know, I just haven't. I wasn't a fan of her as a celebrity, but I don't hate her or anybody. I respect her now more because I am so like amazed what she's been through. I'm not saying she's perfect. I'm sure she lost her mind in there somewhere, and she talks about her mental illness, which I think is amazing. But it is incredible what this woman has actually been through. And she actually now stands as a bit of an icon, whether you like her or not, for Black representation in America. And when you take it across the pond to England, I mean, England, you know, the British have always been, you know, keep calm and keep quiet. Let's not talk about it. The fact that it's coming out of the royal family is actually profound.
Yeah.
Because if it came out of this little place here that nobody heard about, nobody would pay attention. The fact that somebody in the royal family said this out loud is a bit of a scandal, but now it's got people's attention. So it's not just America that's dealing with the race issue. It's the British now as well. And it's about time that this conversation just kind of keeps going. Because like you said, so many people don't want to talk about it. They don't want to talk about it.
And that's why I'm talking about it, because I'm going, you know, I want to raise the question and kind of go, like, considering where the world has just been, we really, really, really need to start having better conversations and bigger conversations. And that's why, the fact that Elon Musk is going to Mars is a really big bloody thing, and people, it should be noted. How to change the carbon footprint of the world should be noted, because
and it's not
conversations, and they're not conversations, right? And you're kind of going, why the hell not? And I mean, even to the point of her mental health, and you kind of going, why was that even a consideration? If someone's going, wow, I need to speak to someone, I'm not okay. When someone's going, I'm not okay, they're telling you that they're not okay. Oprah is one of the first people to have brought that to my attention. Like, when someone tells you who they are, believe them.
Right? Oh, yeah.
Like, I'm not okay, or don't mess with me because I'll whatever. If someone takes that approach, they're not joking. Just listen, right? Yeah. And yet, here we are still in 2021 having these conversations, and I'm kind of going, having a platform to be able to talk about it. I just want to say that I think it's sad. I think people really need to get their shit together, and like, it's really, and I'm sorry for saying that word, but I really think there's more to what we are capable of and what we can overcome and achieve if we have better, more intelligent reasoning behind why we do what we do. And
and it's it's not even just about talking, Kev. It's about having almost planned conversations, purposeful, planned, and very candid, where we create a space where if I say something and you don't like it, we agree that that's okay.
Yeah.
And the opposite as well. Because I think the only way to really fight these types of things, racism and hatred of another person, and I mean, let's not get on the hatred of women, that goes back to the beginning of time. But if that's really how you feel, then I'd like to invite you to come talk to me about it and say, you know what, I hate women, or I hate this, or I hate that, just to get it out. Okay. And then we can start talking. And it really takes me back to my beautiful, I call him mine, but of course the world's beautiful Nelson Mandela. When apartheid ended, what did he do? I mean, what a smart man. He created the Truth and Reconciliation Council. And essentially what that did was it brought the offender and the victim together and their families, and they sat across a table from each other, obviously with people there that could monitor the conversations, psychologically, check them out. There were obviously people in the room to manage all of this. And they started talking to each other. Oh my gosh, the healing that happened. Like, why did you kill my daughter? Why did you, brutalize my son? Why? I mean, it was just unbelievable. And it was black, white, you name it. And I think something like that, an institution that's available where you can present yourself and say, listen, I want to talk about something without reprisal against me, because I think a lot of people hold back their feelings because they're negative. And a lot of people are like, I don't want to hear your negative feelings. So until you're not racist, I don't want to hear about it. Well, you're going to have to talk to the racists if you want to get down to why they're racist. We're going to have to talk to why it was important to talk about, Archie's skin color before he was even a human, when that a black woman just married into the royal family. I mean, if it was a concern, you might have wanted to try to stop it there.
Yeah.
Which would have been a whole other concern. But at the end of the day, you very knowingly created this, you accepted it. Of course, there's a possibility she has black children. She has the genetics for it. I think that would be incredible, actually. But
I'd be like, I'd love to see some color in the, like, now with Meghan and whoever the ancestors come out of that. But the other thing that I noted about this unfortunate conversation was the position that they inevitably put Prince Harry in. because now he's stuck between this entire, what did they call it? The firm? I think they called it the firm.
The institution.
The institution.
Yeah, she uses a few different words for it.
So now he's caught up between being loyal and loving his own family, and having to stand up for his wife, who happens to be of a different color, and a culture. And a different culture and a different country, and now having to bring children into this world, and having to be in that position. I think it's the royals, having the name and the history that goes with this name. I think they also have a responsibility to that. You have a responsibility to be able to navigate this better than they just happened to land on Oprah Winfrey.
Yeah.
That's like, why didn't you have these conversations? Why wasn't this? You're supposed to be, you're adorned by nations to such a degree, especially your own, and yet this conversation happened. How the hell did this conversation happen, and why did it happen?
I very much urge you to go and see it. And it's great that one of us has and one of us hasn't, because it brings interesting perspective. But it is very much, and she uses a few different words to explain it and him as well. But I think institution is probably the right word to use to describe the royal family. And while I've always been a big fan of the Queen herself, and I have a lot of respect for what she has done in her very long reign, I very much am not about institutionalized things, because what comes with that is a lot of drama. There's no freedom to being a royal. They have control over every single thing you do. The last time she saw her car keys was the day she walked into that place. And the next time she saw them was many years later when she walked out. They control your schedule. They control who you eat. If there's too much press going on, they don't let you go out with your friends. I mean, she was controlled to the point where she admitted on television, on Oprah, that she was ready to kill herself and her baby. She was pregnant.
Yeah, that's a problem. That's a really big problem.
I think these conversations are had, and really it's very interesting. They moved. And why they moved was never, ever explained to us. You just hear this and you hear that. And I feel bad for Meghan. She got a hard rap because Harry's like Prince Perfect. And she's like this American girl that just screwed up the whole family. It's not true. It's not true. She does have the great guts, which is very American, by the way. I'm not saying other people don't have guts, but Americans are very brazen that way. They will stand up and say something. They will break the silence. This is something that is very much an Americanism.
And I think, from their stance and their standpoint, I'm quite happy that they actually went on Oprah and did that. What I'm irritated about is the fact that are we honestly why weren't they telling us about the wonderful future of what they've now created in the US or whatever, and what that fairy tale moment was for them, and none of that was spoken. We're still speaking about the color of a child's skin, and that's why I think there's such a disconnect for me, and kind of going, wow, even though they have the opportunities of the world in front of them, they have names and connections of the world in front of them, we're still talking about it. We're still talking about the color of skin, and it just doesn't. I'm perturbed.
Well, they did, and this is where I draw I really have double feelings about all of this, really, and it's probably hard for some people to understand how you can have opposing feelings about the same thing, but if you're a Gemini, then you already know the answer to that. But what I would say is they did use this as an opportunity to set the record straight.
Yeah.
Is that what Oprah's good for? Partially, yes. But I will say that they're going to have to say a little more, because while Meghan has gone through hell, and let me tell you, that is not a position I ever want to be in, ever.
Yeah.
I do feel like she's a little bit, she comes across a little victimized. Poor me, poor me, poor me. Like, we really need to turn that narrative around now. And like you say, use these amazing opportunities to springboard what comes out of those conversations. You know, rather, let's talk about racism now. Let's talk about mental health. She brought up a lot of good topics. Let's talk about how difficult it is for Harry to freaking move to a new country as a royal. Oh my word. You know, it's
and I think that's why this is such an and why I wanted to talk to you about it as well. You know, having a candid conversation around it shouldn't, I think, being in her position, I can't imagine what that must be like, the scrutiny of what she must have gone through. But on the flip side of that, like you say, there was a complete victim role she took.
Yeah. And we both know that that role does not serve you well, regardless of what's happened to you. You know, it's not, it's a mindset.
Yeah. And maybe it is a springboard for them to kind of go, yeah, they want to create content. They want to.
They are going to, because they've created their what do we call it? It's called Archwell. You know, it's their charitable organization. So this is where they're going to springboard all their conversations from about racism, but of course there's a plan. This is part of a bigger plan that I'm sure some PR company has put together.
I really hope so, because if this was just Meghan getting rid of some of her own feelings, I'd be like, that was a wasted opportunity, because it's just, I think they could have been, so much more could have come from this conversation than just what they actually spoke about.
It's true. I agree.
You know, and you know, in terms of we haven't even touched on racism. Do you think, you know, in your world, like, do you experience it as still a visceral thing that you come across often, being in a different country, being in America? Because I look at South Africa and I go, there is still, although we've been through it, we're done with having that conversation, and a lot of people feel like we've moved on. There are certain moments that I can still feel that there's like obvious racism happening.
Yeah, it's a really interesting question. I'm going to give you a really interesting answer now. I've experienced more racism here in America than I've ever experienced anywhere in the whole world existence. I mean, I've been to freaking Ethiopia. You know, like I have experienced once myself, I think. No, twice myself. And then there were other times when I've seen it happen, or it's been said to me about somebody else. But I have experienced a lot of things. I have been told to go back to the country I came from. I have been told that I've been called the help because I'm from Africa. Okay.
Sure.
So I don't know if that word is really, truly derogatory in this country, but it's not how we talk to people.
Yeah.
We might have help, but we don't identify them as the help. We identify them as a team members, you know, part of the family. But in a car dealership one day, I was told back I was not happy with the service I was getting, and I don't think anybody would have been. And I was told back to, if I didn't like it, I should go back to the country I was from. You know, I've seen racism. People have walked up to me and said, "Oh, did you run away from all the black people?" I've had white men ask me, "Oh, did the black people hurt you?" Before Black Lives Mattered, we talk about it all the time. Nobody wanted to say anything. Everything was whispered in my ear. Everything was under the table. I mean, it was just so weird. Because in South Africa, I grew up in apartheid. Like, eventually it's like, what? You don't hear these things anymore. You don't hear the derogatory words. You don't hear, we just got on with it, I guess, because we were so far into it. And I'm sure there's still a lot of racism, but at the end of the day, this is where I'm seeing it. I mean, when I was in South Africa recently, I didn't experience I think I heard one derogatory term said by some stranger, random person, you know, and that was it. Never ever experienced another element of racism there ever again. Now, granted, I don't live there. Obviously, there's a lot of racism there. But from my personal experience, I'm actually experiencing it here. You know, people just think that this is a perfect place and that nothing happens. Like, there's a lot going on here, and there's a lot of racial conversation. And sometimes it gets hectic. Like, the other side can get also very, very angry and intense, like both sides. You know, we have Hispanic people, and we have, you know, got people from Cuba, we got people from the islands, we got the Jamaicans, we've got half of America living down here. Like, there are so many different Spanish dialects. Like, we live in a melting pot, and there's a lot of racism. But I put it down to a more positive effect, in the sense that as long as we're talking about it and it's coming out, we'll get there. We'll get there eventually.
Yeah, and I mean, that's sort of my next sort of question to you is, you know, from my perspective, I would just be, you know, if I could pose a statement and kind of just get people to think just for a second, it's like, what is the quality of our questions we're asking? Like, what is the quality of the questions we're asking? Because inevitably, that is going to lead us to better conversations. And we really need to, and that's why I'm glad we have a platform to be able to talk about stuff like this. And we really need to ask, what is the better question to be asking in this moment, so that we actually start having better conversations. What would you advise, just from your perspective, on what do you think we should be doing around race and, you know, this unfortunate question we're still talking about?
So, one of the things, I've always been anti-racist. So I've always been very vocal about racism. If it was around me, I'm the kind of person who will turn around and like stop you in your tracks because you thought I wouldn't say anything, you know? So that can be very uncomfortable. And I urge people to start getting real uncomfortable about race. I think that racial issues, even the slightest nuances that we still use today, that we don't even know that we use, comes, and it's perpetuated through people saying something slight, and then I don't say anything against it, you know? So
you're not saying we should fight with each other, but we should actually have a conversation about racists and racism and why it's not okay.
Listen, if we have the K word in South Africa, that, by the way, Americans love using. They don't understand the intensity of this. This is not the same as the N word.
Yeah, exactly.
It is the same, but it's just more. There's more to it. This is not a word that Black people call each other in South Africa. It's not a socialized word. We don't sing about it.
Yeah, it's not okay.
And I think if you said that to me, oh, look at all this da-da-da-da.
Yeah.
And I just turn around and I say, yeah. You know, I see. I've missed my opportunity to make any difference with you if I really care about it. And I do. And I'll often turn around and I'll say, listen, I love you, but I don't talk like that. I don't think like that. I don't use those words. Please don't use those words in front of me. There's family members that I don't speak to anymore because they refuse to respect my boundaries on what I'm willing to listen to in my own house. So they want to come in here and be like, I hate this one. Nah.
It's not okay.
Because people like that don't listen. They'll talk and talk and talk and spew out hate, but they don't want to know any better. And are you going to get far with a person like that? Maybe you need to read your audience. But I would say to get uncomfortable, start getting uncomfortable. Just get uncomfortable in life in general, and get comfortable being uncomfortable, whether it's in work or relationships or whatever it is. Just be in a state of uncomfortableness and be okay with it. And if someone says something racially degrading on any level, find the courage to say something. I'm not saying you must turn around and say, oh, what kind of person are you? Racists are human too. It's a learned behavior. That doesn't mean they're evil people. It means that we need to discuss why this is not a reality. You know, it's.
And I think on that point, and I think that's why Clubhouse, you know, it's just like, I'm not promoting Clubhouse. I'm just saying I've paid attention to something that's really working and people are paying attention to it, because inevitably you don't even get to see the other person. You're just getting to hear them and kind of see their perspective, you know, so that you have far less judgment attached to the moment of listening to someone. And you kind of go, wow, yeah, okay, cool. I'm just hearing another human's perspective. So I agree with you. You know, get the courage, pluck up the courage and just say, you know what, dude, what you did now and what you said now was not okay. And you shouldn't say stuff like that. Yeah. I think more people should do that. And yeah, you know, I think what we should be talking about is the wonderful future of Prince Harry's, what's his name? I don't even know his name.
Archie.
Like, what beautiful.
And their new baby, they're having a daughter.
There we go, right? What
and
beautiful.
She will be American.
Yeah, like what futures are they going to have? And irrelevant of what color they are, they're just going to have amazing futures and they're going to have amazing parents and they just happen to be royal.
It's going to be amazing. Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, regardless of a person's feelings about these two people, you know, we also have to respect that they've been through a lot. And I think anybody who's just sitting around at home going, oh, Meghan Markle destroyed the family, you know, is a little bit insensitive, to be honest. So I don't think anything's perfect, but I will say that if you're going to make a difference, make it with the people around you, with your 6 degrees of separation, and make the small impact every day, so that it starts to filter into people's minds, you know. But yes, to have the moment and then to move on from it. So I really hope they move on from this moment. This doesn't become like news for the next 3 weeks, you know. And they talk about positive things, because we really could use a lot more positive
conversations, right? Courageous. Yeah. Good conversations, absolutely.
Yeah.
Guys, it's Candid Conversations with my cousin, and it happens every other Friday. No, it happens every Friday. And it's Kevin Britz and Lauren Britz all the way, and Lauren's all the way from Florida, Fort Lauderdale. Lauren, if anyone wants to get hold of you, what is the quickest way to shoot your message and say, hey, I mean, we're going to be on Clubhouse potentially very soon as well. So.
Yes. I mean, I'm Lauren Britz Photo on Clubhouse. If everyone wants to hit me up there, I look forward to chatting on there, actually. It's a great platform. Otherwise, we are really rolling into the season of business branding and personal branding for our clients. It's a beautiful time. So if anybody wants to get hold of me and just to discuss the branding of you or your client, you can get hold of me at www.laurenbritzphotography.com. Just click on book a complimentary consultation and we can talk for 30 minutes and see what you need and make it happen.
Fantastic. Guys, and all the description and everything, the links are going to be in the description boxes wherever you see us on social media, leadershipbydesign.co. And guys, hit us up. We'll see you online and thank you for joining us. We'll chat to you soon. Thanks, Lols.
See you soon, Gab.